Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
We've heard far too many stories of people feeling the pressure to submit no conditions offers.
3 days to think about it. BC's new cooling off period for home buyers. Why some realtors say it's a mistake. Also,
we're the first city to suggest we do this.
Making big oil pay. Vancouver City Council wants to take its fight against climate change to court. And
even the clock in Gastown? Yes.
That makes sense. The steam clock, well. Yeah.
Vancouver's hidden power plant. Its plans for a green overhaul.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Lien Yeung. Thanks for joining us. The province is introducing new measures aimed at protecting home buyers in BC, a 3-day cooling off period after offers are submitted, allowing more time for due diligence. With it comes a cancellation fee for those who choose to back out of a deal. But as Yasmin Gandam tells us, some in the real estate industry say it's not going to make a big difference.
In a popular housing market like Vancouver, BC's finance minister says a cooling off period for home buyers was a necessary move.
We've heard far too many stories of people feeling the pressure to submit no conditions offers.
The new regulations include a 3-day period to allow buyers to secure financing and properly inspect properties. It also includes a cancellation fee of 0.25% of the purchase price. That means $250 for every $100,000 for those who back out of a deal. But not everyone thinks this was the right move.
It's a mistake.
Lauren Goldman has worked in real estate for over 40 years. He says this new period will be detrimental for sellers.
Hey, why don't we just let property come on the market and force sellers to wait 5 or 7 days or 2 weeks to look at offers? That solves the problem.
If buyers need more time for things like property inspections, he says they can happen prior to an offer.
Somebody might do what we call a pre-inspection. They'll get the house inspected prior to the offers being presented so that they can produce an offer that has not subject to inspection. In addition, they can go to the bank and see if they pre-qualify.
However, this UBC real estate professor thinks the regulation won't tip the scales in favor of home buyers enough to change the market.
Something that I think of as more an insurance policy for consumers, rather than something that's dramatically changing the market in any kind of way.
The BC Real Estate Association says it will be monitoring how effective the new policy is.
When the market has shifted so much that it becomes relatively useless in the current market and the current environment.
The new 3-day cooling off period comes into effect in January. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Vancouver.
The province says it will no longer hold immigrants and refugees in BC jails, ending its agreement with Canada Border Services Agency. The BC government says the practice does not align with its stance on human rights. A coalition of human rights organizations, including Amnesty International, has been lobbying the government on the issue for years. BC is the first province to end its partnership with CBSA. The agency will receive official notice terminating the contract next week. Police are asking for your help in identifying a man who assaulted a woman on a bus last June. And a warning, the video may be disturbing. At around 7:30 in the morning on June 20th, a woman was seen on a Main Street bus when a man started harassing her. Without provocation, the man allegedly punched the woman in the head repeatedly, causing her to fall to the ground. He was last seen getting off the bus at Main and 64th Avenue. The suspect is described as being between 30 and 50 years old, 6 feet tall with a slim build. Anyone with information is asked to contact transit police. An update to news we brought you yesterday about a car collision in Kitsilano that sent a child to hospital. Vancouver police say the 5-year-old girl has now had surgery and is recovering in hospital, adding it will be some time until she's fully healed. She had been standing on the sidewalk at Cornwall and Arbutus with her father and siblings when 2 cars collided in the intersection and careened into her. Both drivers cooperated with police, and the VPD says driver error is likely a key factor in the collision, though the investigation is ongoing. BC Solicitor General has ordered a coroner's inquest into the death of 2 people after a massive fire in Gastown earlier this year. The April blaze destroyed the Winters Hotel on Abbott Street, displacing more than 70 people living in a single-room housing unit. Crews later found the bodies of 68-year-old Mary Ann Garlow and 53-year-old Dennis Gee. Officials say the fire started accidentally by unattended candles. But making matters worse, the sprinkler system was shut down for repairs following a different fire. Mike Farnworth says once the coroner's investigation gathers enough evidence, an inquest jury will hear from witnesses and can make recommendations to prevent similar deaths. A fire broke out in Surrey this morning at a car salvage yard. The blaze was visible from the nearby Expo line, and it spread to 2 sheds and burned a number of tires and other items. But firefighters were able to get it under control and extinguish it completely. The City of Vancouver has voted to consider funding a lawsuit against major oil companies. The goal is to get major oil players to pay for climate change costs. As Benit Brach reports, Vancouver could be the first Canadian city to take that step.
Whether it's seawall or pool repairs to protections from extreme heat, the City of Vancouver says it's time for big oil to cough up the money.
I think it's time to make sure that all the burden of climate change lands on local taxpayers and that big oil pays their fair share.
On Wednesday, Council voted to put money in next year's budget to fund a lawsuit against major oil companies like Shell and Chevron. The costs would mean setting aside up to $1 per resident, totaling almost $700,000 to get the fight before the courts.
I think, as we've seen with the cases against Big Pharma and the cigarette companies, that these are worth getting into, and often it's up to cities to lead the way.
Among those leading the Sue Big Oil movement is West Coast Environmental Law.
They pay a fair share, and of course that's the big question: is what is their fair share of these costs? Right now, they're not paying anything.
Oil, gas, and transportation continues to be Canada's largest sources of emissions, and Andrew Gage says these kinds of lawsuits will become more common and necessary.
We're going to see it more and more because communities, local governments are experiencing massive climate costs. Vancouver is facing $1 billion in costs to deal with rising sea levels.
He says Vancouver would be the first city in Canada to file a lawsuit against big oil for climate change, but there's mixed reactions.
I agree with that 100%. It should have been done years ago.
No, I do not think the taxpayers should pay. If they're going to be responsible, then it should be to help the land they destroy.
The 6-5 vote in council also razor thin.
Putting close to $700,000 towards suing big oil just to fund a lawsuit through a different organization, for me, just far outreaches our elected responsibility.
She says there's more tangible options than a class action lawsuit.
We're suing big oil and then we're lining up at the gas station to fill up our own city-owned vehicles. It doesn't make sense.
So while the debate continues, it'll be up to the next city council after the election to decide if the bigger battle moves forward. Benit Brach, CBC News, Vancouver.
A legal challenge by CocaCola's BC union against the company's vaccination policy has been shot down by an arbitrator. After outbreaks in 2021, the Coca-Cola company implemented a nationwide policy that required employees be vaccinated. Unvaccinated workers could face suspension or termination. The union, representing over 400 BC employees, argued it amounted to forced medical procedure. Coca-Cola maintains it was protecting the health and safety of workers. The arbitrator agrees the policy was reasonable, as it was in line with statements made by the provincial health officer. WestJet workers in Vancouver and Calgary have voted to strike as early as next week if they can't reach a new contract with the airline. The union says its members haven't had a raise in 5 years. They represent more than 700 baggage handlers and service agents. Many say they are burned out and face verbal abuse from customers over flight delays and cancellations. The workers voted 98% in favor of a strike, which could start as early as next Wednesday if a deal is not reached. WestJet management says it is committed to reaching an agreement. Well, when Pope Francis hosts his first Mass in Canada during his upcoming papal visit, he will be wearing special vestments designed by a BC Nishka artist, Julia Kozak.
When they asked me to design something, they said, we want your artistic nature to come through for it, and gave me freedom for things like that. They did ask for some elements, certain elements that they were looking for, but they said, we want you to feel free to express your Indigenous traditions and storytelling in the art.
The custom-made vestments will be unveiled next Tuesday when the Pope hosts a public mass in Edmonton. This is just some of Kozak's other work. She says she wanted to design for her Pope. She wanted the design for the Pope to resonate with people, reminding them that their actions and words can have an impact for generations and to reflect truth, love, justice. And meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now with the forecast. Joe, gotta say, loving this weather. It is very warm, very, very nice outside.
Yeah, and Lien, I also love that there was just a smattering of cirrus clouds out there today to make for more interesting sky, a few more spots of shade, but you're right, really comfortable temperatures. Take a look at where we're sitting at right now across the South Coast, just a touch above our seasonal. In fact, YVR bang on our 30-year average for afternoon highs around this time of the year. 27 out towards Abbotsford, and there is a bit of a humidex, 27 towards Nanaimo. The clouds that we're seeing is sliding up from the south with a low pressure system trying to break through our high pressure ridge. I think that the best it'll do is a few afternoon, evening showers for the interior. We're going to dry right back out though for tomorrow. Now, something else I'm watching for tonight, if you are a keen astronomical sky viewer, 3:30 a.m. is when you're going to want to set your alarm clock. We've had reports from Seattle yesterday of the aurora borealis. We've had a geomagnetic storm interact with our own magnetic sphere, and that's making the aurora borealis a little farther south than usual. But Lien, you'll have to get up extra early. All of the full forecast might be worth it. I might just be sharing the photos tomorrow, though, so I'll keep you posted.
Okay, sounds good. You know what? My baby might wake up at 3:30 that time, so maybe
there you
I'll
go.
wake up in time. That's right. Okay, so Joe, don't want to let you go because we've got another installment of Climate Changers, right? So we want to take you to that. We are headed to major facility, a city source of heat, a steam power plant, apparently just a door away from here in our Vancouver office. They are powered by natural gas, but they say they want to go electric.
Yeah, that's right, Lien. I got to check out this little facility that has a big carbon footprint and hear about their plans to go much, much greener. Take a listen. I'm here in downtown Vancouver beside our very own steam power plant. That's right, your hot water this morning may have come to you via this building, and it's about to go through a major green overhaul. Let's check it out. For decades, this power plant has been quietly supplying heat to over 215 customers, including St. Paul's Hospital, commercial and residential buildings in the downtown core.
Even the clock in Gastown, yes.
That makes sense.
It gets steam from us as well.
Yeah. We're here to find out what this means for our city's carbon footprint now and into the future. The Creative Energy Steam Plant is one of North America's largest district energy systems. The idea is that cities have one big centralized boiler that then carries that heat through a network of pipes, efficiently heating buildings using less energy than if each building had their own boiler. The concept has been around for centuries, dating back to the Romans, and 15 kilometers of pipeline has been heating downtown Vancouver customers since the 60s. This is like right out of, like a 1960s power plant.
These are old pneumatic controls. Basically, they've been abandoned, and we've now obviously upgraded to a computer base. This was state of the art back then.
So this is Command Central, basically.
Exactly, yes. So the old pneumatic controls, that's only for one or two boilers. The other 5 boilers are basically controlled from, it's called our Delta V system.
The 6 boilers in Vancouver generate steam at high pressure and high temperature. Pipes then carry that to heat radiators, underfloor heating, and domestic hot water. Your hot shower in the morning. This has been incredibly efficient for high-density regions like Vancouver for years. Efficient, but not necessarily green.
That's the main fuel that comes into the plant.
This yellow pipe?
Yes, that's all natural gas. That's our main source of fuel.
Creative Energy's natural gas-powered boilers are the single largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in Vancouver. That's why there are major plans to convert to a lower carbon fuel and, most importantly, have electric boilers do most of the work.
Completely renovating this plant, basically building a brand new plant. We are adding phased manner electric boilers and drawing power from BC Hydro's substation here in Murin substation.
First, the old boilers will be replaced with high-efficient boilers. This means no heat escapes and is wasted, but it's still a process that relies on fossil fuel. The ultimate goal is to go electric, with only the natural gas boilers as backup.
And the full rollout will be by 2028, 2029. So when we complete the whole thing, roughly 60 to 70% of the operations will be completely decarbonized, which kind of eliminates about 60 to 70,000 tons of carbon from downtown Vancouver.
That would be a massive reduction to the current carbon footprint of the downtown core.
Creative Energy currently has this proposal before the BC Utilities Commission and has similar plans for Horseshoe Bay, Toronto, and Seattle. Johanna Wagstaffe, CBC News, Vancouver.
What a cool story, Joe. I had no idea that right behind us here at the CBC was a
Neither
steam
did
power
I.
plant. Yeah, I walk by it all the time. Costco run. It's the big blue building. Okay, so
that's the one.
Yeah, so Joe, is this idea of central heating and cooling what the future of cities should look like?
This is what we wanted to know. So we spoke to an energy expert from UBC who said this concept of central heating a densely packed city like Vancouver is the right way to go. It's highly underutilized in Canada. It's used way more in Europe and in cities in other parts of the world. But he also said that the reasons for electrifying have to be the right one. Take a listen.
Oftentimes what we're seeing is these new innovative systems, new renewable energy systems coming online. What they're doing is they are being brought in to meet the future demand as we grow population, as we grow our energy systems and people's demands. They're not replacing the old fossil fuel system.
So the plan is to eventually replace those fossil fuel boilers in downtown Vancouver and then go fully electric. But he went on to say that as we electrify our power sources around the world, we really need to think about what that looks like for future generations. Here in BC, our electricity is already hydro, so we've kind of taken care of the back end when it comes to green energy. But what does that look like for land use? How much more land do we need if everything goes electric? And what does that mean for our waterways? So some big questions, but ultimately he said this is a very efficient way to heat and cool cities in the future. So we'll stay tuned.
Okay, lots to think about. Thank you so much for that, Joe.
You're welcome.
And this is a part of our ongoing series, The Climate Changers, brought to you by Johanna Wagstaffe. The Climate Changers is our new series sharing the stories of people who are taking positive steps, big and small, to tackle climate change every day across communities across BC. Day 4 of the Jake Vernan trial and more cross-examination from the defense, as well as an apology to the alleged victim. We speak to a lawyer about that trial next. And thanks for watching our commercial-free live stream. Northern New Brunswick Park is drawing thousands of thrill seekers for its lift-served downhill mountain bike trails. They were ahead of the curve 14 years ago when it started using a ski lift to take bikers up the mountain. As Alexander Silberman reports, the initiative has been a hit during the summer months.
If you think that downhill mountain bike riding is, oh, that's crazy, that's too dangerous, well, really, it's not much different than skiing. We have green trails for the beginner that are very gentle slope, all the way up to some crazy fall line through the trees. So, yeah, there's really a trail for everybody.
Very popular to rent bikes. People just want to try bikes often. So you come here, you kind of choose what you like and go for the day for a bike downhill. We're going up the chairlift right now, which is sightseeing. So you can see the Restigouche River, the Appalachian Mountains,
Pretty good setup here for downhill mountain biking.
Yeah, we do. So 14 bike racks with 3 bikes you can put on, and the rest has hooks on every rack.
When we get on top of the chairlift, we have staff there taking the bikes off the chairlift, and then you're ready to go for your downhill section.
Honestly, it's the best summer sport I found. I used a longboard, and this is a lot safer, I find. It's a good way to build skills and confidence, too, in your everyday life. There's no better adrenaline rush. It's fun. Even beginners can get into it. The bike will take you where you want to go with the mathematics and geometry of them today. Ended up getting downhill bikes just to come up here, and since then we've been coming up, and we just found it was the best park in New Brunswick.
We've had people from Montreal buy seasons passes here, so they know that they're coming, 2 or 3 times a season. They buy a pass and they're here. All the way to Halifax, Nova Scotia, we have a contingent of people that are here almost every weekend. All the Gaspé coast of Quebec has a good following. All of New Brunswick, obviously. Last summer in particular, we tripled our visits for our downhill bike park. So, and in general, mountain biking at large is expanding by leaps and bounds.
Jake Vernan took to the stand to testify in his own defense today on the 4th day of his sexual assault trial in BC Supreme Court. The former Vancouver Canuck became emotional, but as Karen Larson reports, it was his defense attorney who issued a public apology for his conduct earlier this week.
Under questioning from his own lawyer, Jake Vernan broke down when asked to describe how he first heard he was the subject of a sexual assault allegation. In a shaky voice, Vernan said he was in utter disbelief when his agent gave him the news in April 2021. The now 25-year-old is charged with 1 count of sexual assault related to an incident in his hotel room at the Westin Bayshore Hotel in 2017. Contrary to the testimony from the complainant, Vernan said the woman never told him she didn't want sex and described her as an enthusiastic participant. At the start of today's testimony, Vernan's lawyer apologized for a question yesterday where he suggested the woman could have lied about having a yeast infection or her period if she didn't really want to have sex with Vernan. Karen Larson, CBC News, Vancouver.
The line of questioning directed at the complainant in the trial has drawn criticism. And for a closer look at why, we're joined by Sandy Kovacs, a personal injury lawyer, who says the courts can do better to not re-traumatize sexual assault survivors. So thanks for joining us, first of all, Sandy.
Thank you for having me.
So as a lawyer, what was your reaction to hearing about the line of questioning from Vernan's defense counsel?
I'll preface my comments with the fact that I'm a civil litigator and not a criminal lawyer. And of course, this trial is happening in the criminal justice system. And it's a fundamental tenet of that system that an accused is presumed to be innocent until proven guilty. And so defense counsel is doing what he is permitted to do, which is, obviously cross-examine the complainant and in order to try and attempt to find the truth. And I don't think defense counsel is to be faulted for that. The challenge is, in my view, is that we need more education and awareness about how trauma impacts one's memory and not holding survivors to a standard of perfection in testifying, because they're not going to be able to perfectly recount every single detail that's peripheral to the events.
But how can you go ahead and do that? What are some of the tactics you think should have been employed instead?
Quite frankly, it's a cultural shift that needs to happen, and it's an awareness of how trauma impacts a witness's testimony. And there is respectfully a more sensitive way of getting to the truth. And the challenge is that some of the questions really may not align with the medical evidence as to how trauma impacts a person's testimony. And so if the goal of the process, of the trial process, is to get to the truth, then are we actually getting to the truth by aggressively cross-examining on peripheral details and engaging in some rape myth type questions? And the answer is no, we're not. But I don't think in this case, unfortunately, this is not an exceptional case. And the reality is what we need is education and awareness of counsel of how to engage in cross-examinations of survivors of sexual assault. And that has to start in law school.
And so, Sandy, we've heard that since Vertanen's lawyer has apologized. What do you make of that?
I haven't had a chance to actually listen, and I'm not sure that his particular counsel needs to be held out here as someone who needs to apologize for the system as it currently is. His job is to defend his client to the best of his ability, and appropriately, his concern is with his own client and not the complainant. Having said that, I think it's commendable that he has taken that step to acknowledge that that there's some insensitivity with the line of questioning, and that's a step forward in the right direction. But I think the legal profession as a whole has to take responsibility and to engage in a cultural shift where we can actually make the courtroom a less terrifying environment for sexual assault complainants so that we can improve access to justice. Because for the average complainant walking into that courtroom right now, hearing excerpts of select experts of this cross-examination, it can create a chilling effect, which is what we want to avoid in society if we want these crimes to be prosecuted.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much, Sandy, for that insight. Sandy Kovacs is a personal injury lawyer.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
The Prime Minister has weighed in on Hockey Canada's controversial approach to a sexual assault allegation made against members of the 2018 World Junior team. The sports organization settled with the accuser out of court, but it has since come to light had also been using an internal fund to settle other sexual assault claims. Justin Trudeau says Hockey Canada needs, quote, a real reckoning.
A step in the right direction, but Hockey Canada needs to do an awful lot as an organization to gain back the trust of Canadians. Their behavior over these past years, and indeed over these past months, has been not worthy of an organization that embodies so many hopes and dreams for young Canadians.
It's a wrap. The January 6th House Committee is wrapping up their testimony today. Why their findings say Trump violated the law. Next.
The first thing you notice if you haven't been to a concert in a while is the crowd. It looks about the same as 20 years ago. You just look older. The second thing you notice is the security. It's polite, but it seems to be a lot more thorough. You aren't allowed to take much inside.
It's cameras, video equipment, recording devices. No bottles, cans, glass, umbrellas, lawn chairs, coolers, knives, alcohol, frisbees, banners, weapons of any type. Anything can be thrown or used as a projectile.
Once inside, you notice a lot of stuff is the same as a couple of decades ago. There's still a Greenpeace booth. And there's still food concessions, although these days, instead of a burger, you're more likely to get falafel.
Well, I thought the product would sell at Lollapalooza because it's an alternative sandwich and it's an alternative crowd, and I thought, so I suit the sandwich for the crowd.
That makes sense. Generation X meets the Middle East. There are other changes as well. For heavy metal fans, there's a heavy metal tree. And I don't remember giant human gyroscopes before, although there's a reason for this. It seems dancing at concerts has changed.
1, 2, 3,
It's called skanking. You get a big crowd, then jump up and let other people throw you around. You do it,
Rush!
ah yes, for the rush. The idea is to get skanked to the front of the stage where the bouncers pick you up and physically remove you.
I didn't really mean to do it.
You just got tossed up on stage?
Well, you have to. If you stay in there, you get crushed.
Are you going back out there?
A little while, get something to drink, go right back in.
And that's how concerts are different today from 20 years ago. This looks like a lot more fun. Paul Heaney, CBC News, Vancouver.
U.S. President Joe Biden has tested positive for COVID-19 and is said to be doing, quote, just fine. The White House disclosed the results this morning.
And I really appreciate your inquiries and your concerns. But I'm doing well. I'm getting a lot of work done. I'm going to continue to get it done. And in the meantime, thanks for your concern and keep the faith.
Biden is reported to be experiencing very mild symptoms and is being treated with antiviral medication. He remains on the job but is isolating until he tests negative. Biden, who is 79 years old, is fully vaccinated and has received 2 booster shots. And staying in the U.S., the January 6th committee is holding its final scheduled public hearing of the summer tonight. Members will hear from 2 former White House officials and focus on the actions of former President Donald Trump as rioters stormed the Capitol. Journalist Kate Fisher has this report from Washington.
187 minutes. That's the time between when former President Donald Trump made a rousing speech to his supporters on the Ellipse.
Let's walk down Pennsylvania Avenue.
Until he posted a video on Twitter calling on them to leave the Capitol.
Go home.
It's well known how most of the day unfolded, but for more than 3 hours, Mr. Trump himself went dark. The committee says that tonight it will reveal what was going on inside the White House as a mob attacked the US Capitol. 2 former Trump aides will offer insight. Former National Security Council member Matthew Pottinger and one-time Deputy White House Press Secretary Sarah Matthews. They both resigned in the aftermath of the insurrection. The committee will also show outtakes from a speech to the nation that Mr. Trump recorded on January the 7th, the day after the violence.
Well, the president displayed extreme difficulty in completing his remarks. Of course, hours had passed when he could have simply taken a walk for 10 or 15 seconds over to address the country and address his followers and tell them to go home. And people were beseeching him, begging him to do that.
Committee members have said that tonight's hearing will offer the most compelling evidence yet of Donald Trump's, quote, dereliction of duty. But as yet, the Justice Department has not decided whether there is enough evidence to bring criminal charges against the former president.
Look, no person is above the law in this country. Nothing stops us.
Even a former president.
I don't know how to, maybe I'll say that again. No person is above the law in this country. I can't say it any more clearly than that. There is nothing in the principles of prosecution, in any other fact.
Tonight's hearing is the last to be scheduled, but the panel has left the door open for more, and it hopes to publish a final report in the autumn. Kate Fisher for CBC News, Washington.
Police in Toronto are keeping a close eye on a biker rally in the city. Police say the gathering is unsanctioned, but as Greg Ross explains, bikers say it's just a memorial for a member who died.
Hundreds of motorcycles lined Carlaw Street between Lakeshore Boulevard and Eastern Avenue this afternoon, forcing police to close down many of the surrounding streets. A nuisance for some residents who live in the neighborhood.
Disrupting the whole city or street is kind of ridiculous.
While many others didn't seem to mind.
They're all very polite and pleasant. There seems to be no trouble. Hopefully it'll stay that way.
This was the final destination for members of the Hells Angels biker gang, as well as members of many other biker gangs from around the country after a lengthy procession. It began in Newmarket this morning. Anywhere from 800 to 1,000 bikers taking part in a ride to honor Donnie Peterson, a member who recently died.
Donnie was one of our best friends. We loved him, we cherished him. He was a big part of our world.
The bikers drove together down the 404, onto the DVP, right down to Lakeshore Boulevard, eventually ending on Carlaw at a Hells Angels store.
And they do not have a permit from the City of Toronto.
There was a heavy police presence on the ride and at the rally, but police say they were there for public safety and not to support the bikers. This man, who runs a business on Carlaw, says he received warnings about the event from both sides.
Different points of view. So we're having a party is the one, and the police said it's an unsanctioned event.
This couple visiting from Germany say something like this could not happen where they are from because biker gangs have been outlawed.
Their badges, their colors, the name Hells Angels is forbidden. For us, it's kind of shocking to see them in the open here.
This biker says it's not as big a deal as it's being made out to be.
There's been no troubles. I think, no offense, but the media and I'm sure the police blew this all out of proportion.
This expert says you can't overlook the fact that many bikers have been involved in criminal activity, but he says they are well aware that they are being watched closely this weekend.
It's a public relations thing for the Hells Angels, and they want to look good. They don't want to call bad attention to themselves.
Many of the bikers here today are expected to attend another planned event this weekend in Durham region. The Hells Angels chapter of Brooklyn Whitby is expected to host the 2022 Canada Run, and hundreds of members are expected to be there. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
In Ukraine, Russian forces continue their unrelenting shelling of several cities, including Kharkiv, the second largest city in the country. Local authorities say at least 3 people have been killed and 23 injured. A barrage today hit a mosque, a medical facility, and a bus stop. Police say a local market was hit by a cluster bomb. The mayor of Kharkiv says the attacks are targeting the most crowded areas of the city. And natural gas from Russia is once again flowing to Europe, but at a reduced rate. A turbine that is part of a key pipeline is back in service. It had been in Canada for repairs, but as Abby Kuavasin reports, it was being held there due to sanctions against the Kremlin, and that led to fears the taps would be turned off.
Real concern that Moscow would not resume gas supplies into Europe. Countries like Italy and Germany rely on Russian energy, and about a third of shipments from Russia to the continent is delivered through Nord Stream 1. It's now flowing at a reduced capacity, just as it had been before the scheduled maintenance. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov says Western sanctions are to blame for that disruption. Gazprom had slashed output last month after one of the turbines had not been returned from Canada. Ottawa blocked that delivery back to Russia because of sanctions. But Canada has since provided an exemption for this type of equipment, pointing out that sanctions are meant to punish Moscow, not Canada's allies. And Germany had been very vocal about how it would suffer should Putin use the turbine issue as a pretext to shut off the taps. But certainly he can still make that decision at any time. Part of moving away from Russian oil is finding alternative sources. Germany has already inked deals with the United States and Qatar. It has now also fired up some coal plants despite hoping to move away from that type of energy. The EU is looking at greener sources as well, simply better for the environment, but also more in line with the bloc's support for Ukraine. And under the threat of a major disruption of Russian natural gas into the EU, the European Commission has proposed a plan to slash gas consumption by 15% in the coming months. Ministers will meet on Friday, and then all 27 member states will vote next week. If they all support the measure, it will go ahead. The bloc wants to ensure its storage facilities are as full as possible by November. They're at about 65% full at the moment. And with the winter months ahead, there is concern countries may have to ration natural gas, especially if Vladimir Putin decides to stop exporting to the continent. This is not the position the EU wants to be in because they recognize their fate is not fully in their hands. Abby Kwadasan, CBC News, London.
It's 6:39. There's a live look at Tofino, where the forecast is actually drizzly. Gorgeous night, though, still. Here on the lower mainland, it's warm and getting warmer. Johanna has her full forecast. Province-wide next.
In the year 2050, How will BC look? From agriculture to cities, how will climate change change life? Don't miss 2050 Degrees of Change, a CBC Vancouver original podcast, now available.
His friends say he would sometimes miss the school bus on purpose and run the 2 hours to school. Today, Dave Proctor broke the record for the fastest time to run across Canada on his second attempt. His first attempt was in 2018, but was forced to stop in Manitoba due to a back injury. This time, though, there was no stopping him.
The why is a lifelong goal and a dream of Dave's to run across Canada and break the Trans-Canadian speed record. So we started in Newfoundland on May 15th and are here in Victoria July 21st. Dave's running about 105 to 107 kilometers a day, primarily on the Trans-Canada Highway. Given that it's a speed record attempt, you want to stay as close to that last route that Al Howie ran in 1991.
So maybe the most important question, why are you doing this?
For myself.
For the challenge?
You bet. Because I want to live. Because I believe that this is possible. And I believe in myself that I could put in the commitment and the energy and the effort, and that I could follow through with doing something truly hard and incredible.
How hard has it been?
Harder than I could possibly imagine. It was brutal. It is brutal.
Is it going to be more satisfying than you can imagine?
The harder it is, the more satisfying it is. Absolutely. Congratulations, Dave. Way to go, Dave. You didn't expect that, did you? I just feel like if I could do that, I can do bloody well anything. Just stand right over here. Right here?
Joe, he did it in 68 days. What do you think of that?
That is pretty incredible. You could just feel the emotions at the end. Yeah, I thought my 8K weekend warrior a week was pretty good, but that's impressive.
You know what? If you ever wanted to do that run, I would support you and I would drive right beside you in an electric car.
Yeah. That's all I would ask. Thank you. I'm not going to take you up on that right yet, but let's have that in our back pocket. I at least have a good forecast for any distance of running that anyone wants to get into. But yeah, congratulations. Let me start you off, though, with something we are watching as we do get through an extended summer forecast, and that's the fire danger rating. Let me start you off with what it looks like today. Already, we are losing that blue very quickly. Most of BC now between moderate to high with pockets of extreme. And by this time next week, when temperatures are about 10 to 15 degrees warmer than they are today, we will be looking at extreme fire danger, which really just means new fires can start and spread quickly. I wanted to show you what that heat looks like, taking you through the next couple of days, the diurnal effects. You can see the heat popping in and out through the daytime. Here's Monday, and you can see those warm temperatures extending up from the heat wave that's currently in place across the U.S. By Tuesday, that heat will extend all the way up to Yukon. Thursday is probably the peak of the heat for most of British Columbia, and that's showing up in your afternoon highs, just taking you through to Sunday, when we really start to see those high 30s show up in the interior and the high 20s, low 30s show up on the south coast. So again, expecting heat warnings to begin this weekend for much of British Columbia. I know we've been saying it all week, but now is the time to come up with your heat plan. It's pleasant right now, but when we get those overnight lows, that will be hard, in the high teens to cool down from. You might want a place to head to that has AC. Taking you through the preset forecast, we are watching for afternoon pop-up showers and thunderstorms the next couple of days. Concerning if we do see some lightning, I'm not seeing widespread activity, just something to keep an eye on in the interior. 32 tomorrow in through Kelowna, 24 up towards Prince George and Prince Rupert. Drizzle to start. You know the drill, and getting back to the sunshine by the afternoon. So take a look at this long range. You can really see the difference between tomorrow and Saturday. And then by the time we're talking Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Leanne, those are all YVR temperatures inland hitting the 30s starting Monday. So hot, 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 hot.
Wow, hot. Definitely need that AC. Okay, thank you so much for that, Jo.
You're welcome.
A true symbol of summer here in Canada has been put on the endangered list. The Monarch butterfly, one of the most recognizable in the world, is now considered just 2 steps away from extinction. Katie Nicholson has the details.
Pat Concessi has tried to make her Toronto garden as butterfly-friendly as possible. There are purple pollinators and flowers that bloom late into fall.
Because the monarchs need to collect enough nectar to get the energy to make their migration back to Mexico.
And big rocks to shelter them from the wind and keep them warm.
They retain their heat, and butterflies have a challenge with maintaining their body temperature. So I will often come out and find butterflies sitting on the rock.
Despite her best efforts, today, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature added the monarch butterfly to its red list and categorized it as endangered, nearing extinction, because its population has shrunk between 22% and 72% over the last decade, threatened by habitat destruction and climate change. Canada hasn't yet listed the monarch as endangered, but conservation groups have been keeping a close eye on it. Changes in crops and pesticides have eliminated large amounts of milkweed, a vital source for the monarchs.
One of the most important things that has contributed to their decline is the loss of milkweed. And here in Canada, we can help support the monarch butterfly by planting more milkweed and by planting more native species that they depend on.
That helps, but part of the reason the population is in peril is climate change.
Monarch numbers are really tied to variation in year-to-year weather, and that the conditions that are best for monarchs are becoming more rare. So the hot and dry conditions are not good for them.
Butterflies need a source of water, as do many of the flying insects, so I just keep a pan of water there.
Still, Concessi believes every little bit helps, even in a small patch of urban greenery.
Like many people my age, I think about the world that I grew up in and how different the world my grandchildren are growing up in. And if there's something I can do to slow the pace of species extinction, that's something I want to do. Got a butterfly coming right through.
Small changes not just for the butterflies, but her grandchildren too. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
A gas-powered truck is in the process of being converted into an electric vehicle by a small company in Windsor, Ontario. In a few short weeks, it should be fully transformed and ready to hit the road. As Jason Vio reports, it's the first project of its kind for the company.
What's happening here is a test case planned and executed over 2 years.
We're trying to keep everything as driver-friendly as it was before.
The goal is to see if gas-powered vehicles can be converted efficiently into electric ones.
A lot of these vehicles have a long lifetime, and it doesn't make sense that these vehicles would not be converted in order to still have the same or get the same benefits of an electrical system.
The project is a joint venture between the company Canadian Automobility Enterprises, students at St. Clair College, and the local utility company Enwin Utilities.
It really is an investment. It's understanding, it's learning. The payback that we're going to get from the advanced view on what an electric vehicle will do for us in a fleet perspective, what it's doing to help build knowledge within the college, the next generation of engineers and fabricators.
So in order to make this happen, they essentially had to pull the car apart. So they removed the connection points and then hoisted the Ford F-150 body off of the frame. And then you have the chassis exposed. They removed the 3.5-liter gas-powered engine and other components and replaced it with 8 massive batteries to run this vehicle and an electric engine. One obstacle to overcome, how to get the truck a charge if there's a lengthy power outage.
We can't be on the side of the road with a dead battery while the community is looking to us to put the power in place.
Up next is to get the truck back in one piece to test on the road. Ultimately, they hope this project leads to more commercial conversions, possibly in the farming or mining industries. Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor, Ontario.
What the heck is that? Plenty of Canada Line riders heading to Richmond might be asking that very question. Part robot, part bee. We break it all down on this intriguing display that's turning heads next.
Wanted to get involved in the music industry. I was just a guitar player, joining bands left and right, and that's how it started. So I wasn't looking to become what this has become. This is like the biggest music store up north New Brunswick. A local store that was providing some guitar strings and sticks, burned down. It was Phil's appliance, and then it was time for me to do something about it because I had joined the local rock band. I started with drumsticks and guitar strings and the basics, things that musicians need. So we started by bringing in the gear from Montreal. I would sell them. They, can you get me a set of drums? Can you get me a Marshall amp? I said, yes, I did. And it just kept rolling and getting bigger with that. So, and there's hundreds of musicians in this area. And so it's a must that there is a store that provides, service and as well selling musical instruments to musicians that do require it to make a living sometimes.
When you're in a small town like Hamilton, like all the employees we've had over the years, right now it's just the two of us, but we've had a few different employees over the year, and we were more friends than co-workers there. And besides, most of them were in music. It's been fun all along. It's fun to come to work.
Now I'm at a point where retirement is my next step because, I've done my share. 40 years of this is plenty of information, and I've created a good crowd and a good group of people that keep coming back either to buy or to get some service. I'm glad it happened, yes. I've enjoyed the last 40 years.
In the year 2050, how will BC look? From agriculture to cities, how will climate change change life? Don't miss 2050, Degrees of Change, a CBC Vancouver original podcast, now available.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Don't miss the Vancouver Queer Film Festival, August 11th to 21st. Enjoy the best in local and international queer cinema, along with workshops, filmmaker panels, and more. Get tickets today at queerfilmfestival.ca. And on July 31st, join your favorite CBC Vancouver and CBC British Columbia personalities at the Vancouver Pride Parade. Learn more at vancouverpride.ca.
Well, the next time you take the Canada Line and are about to cross the Fraser River, keep an eye out. You might spot a giant part robot, part insect art piece perched near the shore. Pollinate your senses with Queen Bee X1000. Artist Junko Playtime built it using pieces of wood and leftover car parts collected from around the city. The mysterious artist says the entire sculpture was created without using any motorized vehicles. Instead, everything was transported by bicycle trailer. Previously based in Montreal, Junko Playtime has built a number of installations out of collected items from across the country. Very cool piece. I'll have to be sure to look out for that next time. And that's it for us tonight. Thank you for joining us on CBC News at 6. And if you are not already watching us on CBC Gem, feel free to download our free app. Check it out. It's a cool one. Lots of other shows on there. And Dan Burt will be in tonight on CBC News Vancouver, our late night show at 11 o'clock after the National. Have a good night.